Hey, folks, for episode 79 of the Rental Roundtable, we had on my friend Dino Caparco. He's the president of Taylor Rental in Rhode Island, our first Rhode Island guest. Really awesome episode, different story. He didn't start in rental. We actually started in the rental industry about the same time, about 4 or 5 years ago. Met him at the first ARA show in Las Vegas in 2021. And he bought a rental company that was kind of doing okay and really turned it around in 4 years, 2.5 times revenue, 2.5 times profitability, no shortcuts. Uh, Totally changed the team. The one person who came over from the previous team, painted the building, bought new equipment, put a new parking lot in, really changed the perception of the company through hard work. And, if there's shortcuts in the rental industry, I haven't found them, neither Dino, but he put the hard work in to get there. And, really great story of someone who bought a rental company and is really taking it to the next level. So if you're interested in that story, I think you'll like hearing from Dino. Great guy. All right, everyone, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 79. We have on my friend Dino Caparco, president of Taylor Rental in Rhode Island. Dino, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I think the first Rhode Island guest, as far as I could tell. So we're starting to hit all 50 states. I think first Rhode Islander. Are you from Rhode Island? Where'd you grow up?
I am born and raised Rhode Island.
All right. Have you lived anywhere else, or that's your whole life there?
When I was younger, I lived in Southern California for a couple years. But a lot of people always end up coming back to Rhode Island.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I was reading your bio. You're an avid runner, over a dozen marathons, ultra marathons, up to 50 miles. I'm not. I haven't done a dozen. I've done half a dozen marathons. What's been your favorite race you've done?
Um, I'd like to say Boston. I've done Boston five
Yeah,
times. Boston is really a really fun race. Kind of a double-edged sword because of the time of the year. Training
yeah.
all winter long. When it's warm, a lot of times you get a warm day, and it can be brutal. But the fans and the crowd in Boston's incredible. One of my favorite things about Boston is actually going up there in the weeks leading up to the marathon and doing some training runs, either on the front half or
Mm.
the back half of it. And it's just like it's almost like it's race day. There's so many people out there, but it's pretty amazing route and fans. So I love that race.
That's the goat. I did my first. I was telling you my first major marathon 5 days ago and did New York, and we were talking about having your name on your front. So my name's
Yep,
Kyle. I didn't have my name, but I was running next to a guy named Carl, and it
yeah,
sounded like I was Kyle. People were like, let's go, Carl, in my mind I was, I feel like they were cheering for me. So I think next race I'll have my name on my shirt. Get some more credit
definitely.
that way.
Yeah, it helps you get through.
And shout out to Anthony Durante if you're listening. I appreciate you, mile 13 with the Go Kyle sign. So needed the boost. So we've had a lot of runners on the show. Our last guest, a couple of guests ago, Dr. Vince Affelli, he's done 15 or 16 Ironman triathlons. Like just I don't know. I think if you're a business leader, you sort of get put in that bucket a little bit. The endurance crazy
Yep.
athlete. So it's different brain, different way of thinking. So.
Yeah.
Anyways, we can talk about a whole running episode. We won't do that for our audience today, but I want to talk about your story. You're, new to rental, newish. I've been in rental 5 years. You've been around that same time. Most of the guests that come on have rental in their blood as a theme. They've grew up in rental, grandfather, father, et cetera. That's not my story. It doesn't sound like your story. So, you're now running a location in Rhode Island, and I
Right.
want to hear how you got here. Tell me about your background. You have an engineering background, MBA.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of other stuff outside of rental. Tell me how you got here today.
Yeah. So before buying the business, I was an engineering manager at a robotics and custom automation company where I worked for over 24 years. Um, and I've always kind of been entrepreneurial. I've had some small businesses, invested in real estate. And in the engineering capacity that I was in, I was basically running two departments within a company, and it was very autonomous. So it was essentially like I was kind of running my own business, full P&L responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, I had my mechanical engineering degree, and then I went back and got a master's in business. And I've always had the itch to do something, and I was just to the point where I kind of really outgrew the company that I was at. There was no room for me to keep on moving up, and I knew that my next step had to be to do something for myself. What it was, I wasn't 100% sure. I was looking for some type of business that had some type of revenue stream, but also had an opportunity to improve or grow the business. That's when I found Taylor Rental. Never had any exposure to the rental industry. I've maybe rented a couple of tools or a trailer
Yeah.
back in the day, and started through the process of that. Made an offer. Offer was accepted, and once I was on the contract, it took quite a while to go through between all the different approvals and inspections and everything you have to do. That's when I really started digging in and learning about the rental industry. I think I joined the ARA, and toured. I visited a bunch of other folks and other rental companies. Anybody who would let me come in and talk to them and learn about it. I was really excited to do. So I traveled around, met a bunch of people, went to a bunch of different businesses, and I still, it was, reasonable to me to look at it from the outside, and I kind of understand basically what it was all about. But it wasn't until the day that we closed that I actually I stepped foot in my store when it was closed a couple times to do some inspections and to do some things of that nature. But it wasn't until the day we closed that I actually stepped behind the counter as the business owner and as an employee in the rental industry. And it was just a completely different world.
It's probably still like getting the start line of a marathon or maybe your first marathon. You're just like, "What am I doing?"
Yeah. Yep.
Like, you're at that point, you're, like, pot committed. You're in, you're not
Exactly.
gonna bail. So I'm curious, so you're 24 years engineering manager, you get an MBA, robotics, good good setup, I'm sure, and you just had this itch to be an entrepreneur, right? It sounds like that was
Yes.
just sort of what particular? Did you wanna be your own boss? Did you want the financial freedom? What about that? Because it's hard. It's always hard to take a leap. It's probably even
Right.
harder after you've had a career for 24 years. What was driving you to wanna be an entrepreneur?
I think that the biggest thing for me was to be able to kind of um to be able to run the business and also benefit from it. I wanted to
Mm,
to have more um to benefit from the decisions that I made. I had a
mm,
pretty good track record at the previous company that I was
yeah.
at, and I figured like, hey, I've been doing well and making these folks a lot of money. It's time to do something that's going to benefit me and benefit my family. So I think that was one of the biggest drivers. I knew it was going to be a lot of work, so I knew initially it may be a little less freedom, but long term, hoping for a little more freedom.
Yeah. So you wanted to be the captain of your own ship. Like, if we're gonna succeed, I want to participate in that and, own your own decisions. And you're looking at were you looking at other businesses outside
Yes.
of were you
I
other
was
industries too?
right. Industries, of course, my first inclination was to look at something closer to the engineering field.
Yeah.
We primarily dealt with like injection molding facilities, something in that arena, something that I had, an expertise in. But, I think from the business side, business is business to some extent, and there's a lot of transferable skills between where I was and where I am now. And I was just looking for something that made sense for me and that had was a good opportunity, I think.
Yeah, and what about the rental business model at that time was attractive to you? You looking at it from the outside? Because there are people who listen to this podcast who are a lot of them mostly in rental. There are people who want to get into rental and they're trying to learn. When you're looking at, engineering companies and rental and probably a dozen different businesses, what about the rental business was attractive to you?
Well, the rental business in general, at the time, this was it's a little over 4 years
Yeah,
that we closed. Things were coming back together. There was huge upside. I did some research just on the state of the industry, and it looked like there was really going to be a good trajectory of growth in the future.
yeah.
Also, I think in particular with the store that I looked at, I saw that there was really like a lot of older equipment that, I could tell that it was a seller that really was kind of looking to get out of the business. And I know that there was an upside in that. That was the thing that really attracted me to this specific company.
It was one that was a more of a not value play, but you could see the growth potential, right, with
Right.
more investment. A lot of people sort of get in this, they like, I want to run my own rental business, right? Well, there's really two ways: you can buy one or start one. Did you consider starting one at all? And if not, what were some of the reasons why you went the purchase what route? Some people call it entrepreneurship through acquisition, ETA, right? Like, why did you decide to buy a business versus start one from scratch?
So in my specific case, I think it was looking at a business that had the revenue stream coming in already.
Yeah.
Um, if you're gonna build a business from scratch, it's obviously huge capital expenditures that you're going to be looking at. So thinking about the biggest bang for my buck, it just made sense to
Yeah.
go that route because if you look, if you look at the numbers just to start, even though I knew it was going to have to be a lot of capital expenditures to get the company to where I needed it to be, but at least it was running and they didn't all have to be at the same time, and I could kind of
Mhm.
couple the growth with the expenses, and use that revenue to keep on putting it back into the business. So that was my idea. In Rhode Island, we're obviously limited with land and availability, so that's another consideration. The lands here is very expensive. To find something where you'd be able to start a location from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, buying the revenue and the existing customer base is considered a lower risk if you get the right price. What's been the most surprising thing getting into rental, buying the business? What surprised you the most?
Um, I think the biggest surprise, I think, are the customers. A lot of the customers, how some of the customers perceive rental companies. I think that some customers think that you just have this equipment sitting on the floor and that you should kind of just let them borrow it for as long as they want.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising just how loose in initially, especially in my place, the biggest shock to me was like how the customers, what they expected and what they were looking for, as opposed to
Mm,
what I'm accustomed to, like in a business, or if you go out to a restaurant where you pay for your meal. A lot of folks, from my experience, were looking to get the meal without really paying for it,
mm.
and that was
Is
that
that a
biggest
common?
shock for me.
Yeah. How do you combat that? Is that something you've heard? You visit a lot of companies. I know you're involved with the ARA. Is that a theme you've heard from other companies, or is that
I think
something to your customer base?
and I think one of the biggest things are the companies that have been around for a long time and have had some customers that they've been dealing with for a while. If you start making concessions over the years, then it kind of turns into a situation where that's what customers expect. And I think for me, the biggest thing when it comes to
Mm,
combating that, we had to really implement processes and put processes in place, which to me, I think this was a benefit for me looking from the outside in, because to me it was just like
yeah.
it was kind of black and white. I was like, well, this is a business and this is how you run a business. This is the
Mm,
process and this is how we're going to do this. And of course, my first 6 or 7 months were customers telling me how they'll go elsewhere with their business. But during that time, we were also growing our business and profitability. And by the first year, we doubled it. So those customers that went elsewhere weren't really the customers that we wanted to have as our customer base.
mm. So the customers who are delinquent payment, paying late, you sort of put some new processes. Hey, we're going to cut that out, and they threatened you, and some of them left. But you're like, those are the customers you didn't want anyways, right?
Right, exactly, exactly. And we had in it. It took about a good year to cull it all out to like, hey, listen,
Yeah.
my idea is like we're going to provide you with good equipment. In the past, the equipment wasn't really well maintained. It was an older fleet.
Hmm.
My focus is on providing you with really good equipment, maintaining the fleet well, turning it over, getting new equipment, not having equipment that's 10 years old. But in turn, I'm going to charge you a good rate for it. I'm not going to be the cheapest person around, but we are going to have some of the best equipment around. And I
Mm,
think that a lot of the customers started to understand and see the value in that. And a lot of the comments or the 5-star reviews that we get on Google, customers recognize that, hey, this place has great equipment. And I'm constantly, pointing that out to my employees because I'm always pushing, like, we really have to, you know what, if this isn't right, let's go one step further, go above and beyond and try to make it even better, exceed what the expectations of the customer are.
mm. So you bought this business, older equipment. customer base wasn't the best customer base ever. You started buying better equipment, putting better business practices, raising prices. How has your customer base changed in 4 years based on all those changes? Is it similar? Is it totally different if you got moved up market? How's your customer makeup changed in 4 years?
So I think from the customer makeup perspective, we're mostly like, homeowners, small contractors, and landscapers. I think some of the bigger contractors now are looking at us saying, "Hey, I didn't realize you had all this stuff." Or and I get
Mm,
comments. People will drive by and call and say, "Hey, I saw this piece of equipment out there. I didn't, it looks great out there. I didn't realize that you had it." So I
yeah.
think that people are more looking at us like, "Hey, I know I can get a reliable piece of equipment from them." So I think that we're starting to do a lot more with, I think more people are looking at us. And even we do events as well. We're about 60% of our business is the equipment side. But I've had folks come in our store because the inside of the store was pretty dated and you wouldn't have expected. But I've had people come in and say, I never would have ever rented a tent or even thought of renting one here before. But wow, it's changed. So I think on that side of it, we've made a lot of improvements too, just in the customer's perception, and they see that we take care of the place. I'd say for my first 3 years, there wasn't a day that went by that somebody came in and said, "This place looks great." Even today,
Mm,
as a customer came in and said, "You've really done a good job. This place looks good." So people notice it, and it makes a difference, to most people.
mm. And was that the case 4 years ago? Was it clean and spacious the way you have it, or was that something else you changed as you bought it?
No, that's something else we did. We cleaned it up, painted it. One of the first things I did, pave the parking lot, put a
Yeah,
new fence, and
yeah.
to me, that stuff is kind of like low hanging fruit. And I'm kind of a person that likes to have things, in the best manner possible. So I saw that stuff and said, this we've got to improve this.
Yeah, I mean, if you've some of our guests have heard me talk about the New York subways, I think Malcolm Gladwell talked about was the 70s or 80s, and they had all these crime and everything, and they cleaned up the subways, they took off the spray paint, they started enforcing the ticketing, and like crime plummeted because the perception was this is a tight operation, right? Everything is run down, the fence is broken, the door doesn't shut. It doesn't make you feel like you're at a top tier place, right? So you painted the building, added new parking spots, paved the, all the stuff that was like not the sexy MBA stuff, but just
Right.
making your business seem professional, right? And were you? It's hard to say like you had an ROI, but were you able to feel that? Were you able to feel like people had a new respect or new view of your business after doing all that?
I think so, definitely. I mean, I'd say within 6 months or so, within a short period of time, I was able to see that. When I was doing it, I was just like, there was no question. I'm like, this has to be done. With the vehicles that
Yeah.
that they had were all old vehicles. I replaced all of the vehicles with newer vehicles, new logos. But I knew that it was going to be a payback, but I didn't really start seeing that until a little bit later. But and it was something I was trying to, pick and choose at the beginning of what you couldn't do everything at once. But I
Yeah.
was trying to pick and choose of what I could do. But the biggest thing I think was, at this point, we have one employee working for us that worked at with the previous owner, getting the employees to understand like this is what I expect. These are my expectations. I
Mm,
use the old running saying, "Hey, go the extra mile. It's never crowded." And
yeah.
and that's what I expect. It's like this is good enough, but if we do this, it'll be better. And I'm sure they kind of thought I was a little nuts at the beginning, but now they get it, and they understand what my expectation is, and they all have kind of embraced that same philosophy. Even the employee that was there, he was able to kind of pivot and really help lead this.
So there are. I guess you've got one guy from the last 4 or 5 years who's come over. Was there a lot of team change as you kind of went through this process too?
Yeah. Yep. The folks that were in place were there for a long time, and they were really, the previous owner owned it for 42 years. Some of them were there for
Yeah.
25, 30 years. And it was pretty much they were all running the show. And I kind of once I said this is how we're going to do it, and we have to have these consistent processes in place. They weren't really accustomed to that. They weren't used to that. they were used to, kind of like wheeling and dealing with customers is one of the
Yeah.
biggest things. Like, hey, this customer came in, he's wants to rent this piece of equipment. He's walking away. Let me chase him in the parking lot and tell him we'll give it to him for half price. I was like, no, 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 no. That's not what we do here.
Yeah.
So,
So with that team, as you kind of put your new culture and your expectations, I sort of I'm a big Nick Saban fan. I sort of imagine you coming in with like, here's the deal, right? We're gonna
yep.
execute. We're gonna have the cleanest shop in Rhode Island. We're gonna, but did people self-select out and say, yeah, here's my 2 weeks, or were you having to force, say, hey, look, this is your last day, sort of stuff? It was a
So
combination of
so the
both.
major employees, they did, they opted out,
Yeah.
and I worked hard to build a new team, and I've been fortunate to really get some good folks on board. We had one rental company that went out of business, and they were auctioning off their equipment. I immediately called the president of the company. I said, "Hey, I don't want any equipment, but how about employees? What do you got?" And they that's where I got my first key employee who had experience in the event industry, and then
Hmm.
with the equipment side, a little bit of exposure, and then I was able to get a few more key employees, and now the whole team is a very solid team. We're kind of more in sync, much more in sync than it was before. And actually, um, get those folks that were there for the longest time leaving was really, the best thing that happened at the time. You think it's going to be painful, and you're a
Yeah.
little scared of it because, especially me, I didn't have experience in the rental industry. These,
Yeah.
especially when it came to the event side, I started learning the equipment side pretty quick, and the mechanic was solid. But the folks that were in the event side, I was like, I can't really do this without them. I can't go put up a 40-100 tent myself.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine, maybe some sleepless nights. You seem pretty calm now, but like, you buy this business, you get in there, you're painting the building, you're raising the prices, you're buying new equipment. Now you're also updating the team and you have no background in rental. Like, what
Right.
gave you the confidence? It sounds like it's been working very well, but like, what gave you the
Yeah.
confidence to like make the hard decisions? Because those are all hard decisions, especially the tenured people who've been here forever.
Right, you do, and, I mean, it was just like, I kinda lean back to just some basic, business principles, and talk to folks. I reached out to, contacts that I made in the industry, kinda talked to some people, walked it through with them. Um, but yeah, it was just trying to figure out what's going to be in the best interest of the company, and is this going to work moving forward? So kind of, sometimes you just got to rip the band-aid off, and fortunately, we were, and it was a struggle to get employees too. 4 years ago, the labor market was much different than it is now. So it was even so much harder to really get like quality people. But little steps at a time, and as we got one and we got another one, it kind of just changed the whole dynamic, and it's been really positive.
We've talked to a lot of rental companies who struggle with getting great people. What are the character traits that you look at, and how important is industry experience to you? Because there's a view that you have to be in the industry. Me and you weren't, but some people think that. Other people think get people with the right culture values. You can kind of train anybody to do it. What's important to you when you hire new people?
Work ethic. The work ethic is the number one most important thing to me. I think if somebody has a good work ethic and they understand um, how to work with people. Being a customer
Mm.
focused business, it's good to have people that have experience with customers as well. But if somebody's got a good work ethic, and obviously on the tent side of it, you're going to want to have people that have some type of physical abilities. But on the store side of it, um, the equipment side of it, somebody with some type of mechanical aptitude, somebody that knows just a little bit. But the work ethic is the key. One of my best employees is a younger guy that came in. He's maybe 22 years old now. Came in 3 years ago or so and said, "Hey, I can do this. I can fix lawnmowers. I can do this. I can do that." And he was just a kid, and I said, "You know what, let's give him a shot." He's one of my key employees, both sides. He can go put up a 40 by 100 tent very willingly and with a smile, and then he can pull an engine out of a machine and do a rebuild on the engine. And he's just learning, he's just getting started. So, I see a tremendous value. He's going to be growing with the company and he's going to continue to learn. And I've got a couple other guys that have come on board and they're kind of along that same path where they're learning and they're going to grow with us as well.
Mm. Sounds like you got some great folks you've been able to hire and like the diamond in the rough, not someone with 10 years experience in
Right.
equipment rental. You found a 22-year-old. You're investing in them. Sounds like you have someone you want to build with for a long time. How do you retain someone like that, right? Because it's expensive to live in the United States, and everyone's probably looking around and get another. I can make an extra buck across the street.
Right.
How do you get someone like that? How do you keep them with you for the next 10 years?
So I think you got to give them the obviously compensation is a piece of it.
Yeah,
I work to try to make sure, like proactively, like, hey, if you're doing a good job, here you are now. You can continue to grow, and we can continue to bring you to the next level. And also, we've implemented a 401k plan.
awesome.
Most of my employees are all contributing to the 401k plan. But I think, especially with somebody like the example that I just told you, having the opportunity to grow within the company and have more responsibility, I think is something that really is key. And if they can handle it, I mean, it just works so well on both sides because it's like, hey, I'm willing to compensate you. You're willing to grow, and we can keep on working together. And I want to see you keep growing and get to the next level. So, most of our team has definitely taken on more responsibility and learned a lot more since we started or since they started.
And I've had the pleasure of like not being a rental owner, but I've talked to thousands at this point. And
Yeah,
I visited one yesterday in Georgia. They've got 90 employees, and the warehouse was spotless,
yeah,
perfect, clean, like the back alley behind the shed, perfectly clean. They have a huge attention to detail. And I had lunch with them, and I was asking Steve like what like how has he been so successful? He's done it himself for 15 years, and he's always talks about the team. We invest in training. We actually buy him lunch every single day, right?
yeah,
It's not like catered all the time. Maybe it's Publix sub, but like you treat people well. We also find that hour lunch break where they're driving around getting lunch, you get more productivity. And I see the difference between like the really great companies, rental companies, and the average ones. And you could walk in the building and within 30 seconds know. Like Steve
yeah,
Mao at Brainerd, you walk in, super clean building, very
yeah,
professional. Like that stuff matters.
yeah,
John Scott at First Source in North Carolina. His same thing. Really clean building. The group yesterday sounds like your building. You just take care of the building and the appearances, but the people. That's what they always
yeah,
talk about, the people and getting the great people. Sounds like you've been able
yeah,
to do that the hard way and
yeah.
made a lot of changes to get there.
One thing we do too that I don't know, I know some rental companies do it too, but we also, with the equipment, I'm constantly updating it. If somebody takes a piece of equipment and they scratch it all up or scrape it all up, we'll do a repair, we'll paint it, and we'll try to keep the equipment so it looks really nice. I had a customer do damage to it, and I said, of course we charge the customers when they do damage, and he said, you're just wasting your time by you're painting it. Somebody else is going to go damage it again. I said, no, we're not wasting our time because when people see the equipment and they see it looks good, they actually are more careful with the equipment. If they get a
Mm,
piece of equipment that's all scraped up and dented up and looks like crap, then they're going to be like, yeah, this is a piece of
yeah.
junk. So I might as well just follow suit and treat it like a piece of junk. But and that's one thing my employees I like. They get excited. Hey, Dino, look, we took this thing. Look how it looked. They'll text me photos of it or photos of something that they're doing, and it's for me, I feel good because they're taking that pride.
Mm. So second, you've got a culture of you take pride in your work, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think you think about Nick Saban. He was like planting the sign with the if you're a sweeper, you want to put a sign out that says I'm the best damn street sweeper in the world, right? Lives
Yep.
here, sort of thing, right? It doesn't matter
Yep.
what your job is, but you take pride in it. When you're buying equipment, you said you upgrade the fleet. Do you buy used ever, or are you all always
So
new and you pay the price to get the new stuff?
I pay the price to get the new stuff. So anything that I've added to our company has been new.
Yeah.
Even the vehicles, all new vehicles,
Mm,
box trucks, um, anything that we've gotten, I purchased new. I just because I just feel like when I first went into the business and I saw the equipment and I saw the condition of it, I know that at least if I have a starting point and I know like, hey, we buy this new, we're gonna do our very best to maintain it, and it's still a rental piece of equipment, so it's
yeah.
gonna take some hits. But at the end of the day, we knew what we started with, and we knew where we are. And then I've had luck with equipment that we sold, that we've gotten pretty good return on selling the equipment, because of the condition that it was in and that it's been maintained in.
It's very similar. Jeff Van Doggen from Econorent came on a few episodes ago in Canada. Same thing. Like buy brand new equipment. Not a cheap price, but a fair,
Right.
medium high price. Great customer service, and they're dominating because
Yep.
like they're just executing at a very high level. And he was like, I only buy new equipment. It's more expensive, but it ties into the whole thing. You're gonna have a clean building. You're gonna have new cars. You're gonna have new employees, new equipment. You can then charge the higher price, and
Yep.
it's an investment. But it sounds like it's been working out. Anything you'd go back and do differently? You go back 4 years ago. You bought this company. Would you still buy that same company? Would you buy one that was maybe already had all the changes and intact that you made? What and anything you do differently next time?
No, I definitely buy the company if I had the opportunity to do it again. I think I kind of I exceed I, it, this the company and where we are now. It really exceeded my expectations. I wasn't thinking that we would be where we are now when we this quickly when I bought the company. And kind of looking back at it from those eyes, just thinking about, now I'm trying to figure out how I can get this, how I can get another company, and how I can get,
Mm,
continue the growth that we're on. Um, so, I think that to me is the biggest thing.
yeah. Well, you don't always hear about the entrepreneur who exceeds expectations. They're optimists by nature. I know I am. So everything's gonna go perfect to the right, and not
Right.
always the case. What you
Yeah.
don't have to share your numbers, but like, how has the business grown in 4 years? You mentioned it's exceeded.
Right.
What's gone well
We
in the last
more
4 years?
than doubled both our sales revenue and profitability from where they were before.
Yeah.
I'd say that we're like two and a half times where they were when I bought the business. We also, and as soon as I bought the business in 2021, and there was actually an empty lot next to us. And since 2021, I was trying to purchase that lot. It was owned by our state, the Department of Transportation, and it's a buildable lot. So they said, we can't sell it. We would have to auction it, and they just gave me the no, no, no every 6 months, until finally this past year they said, okay, we will auction it off. And we actually won the auction. So now we acquired the land, and now we're only on a small lot. We're only on a half of an acre. So that's basically
Mm,
another half of an acre. So now our lot size just doubled, and I'm right now working on expansion plans to build to expand onto our existing building and build another building onto that lot, so that we can continue to grow the business. Right now, if all of our equipment is in house, then we can't even fit it in our existing yard, and I want to buy more equipment.
right.
So, the guys are looking at me like, okay, where are you gonna put this lift that you just came home with?
I don't know. Be at 90% utilization, and we'll have to deal with this.
Exactly,
why
exactly.
why aren't these things on rent? That's your problem.
Yep,
Uh,
exactly.
what would be the next goal for you? Are you thinking about a second location? You mentioned maybe buying another company. Would you buy another rental company? If you kind of flash forward and you continue to exceed the next 3 years or 5 years, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to purchase another company, but I think, kind of circling back to what we talked about at the beginning when you said, "Hey, if when you're doing it, starting off, would you buy or build one?" I think now, with the experience that I have in my existing business, I wouldn't be scared to start
Yeah.
from scratch, and to actually open a new location from scratch, because I think there are some synergies and things that we can benefit from, by just having this location and adding another location. So now I'm much more open to that side of it, because now I can support the capital expenditures, and we can share resources. So I think from this point, that is absolutely something that I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of people who start a rental company, and the people who have the most success by far are the people who've done it before. They're usually worked at United Rentals 15 years, and they're ready to go out. And like, if I started one, maybe I know more now, but if 5 years ago, like 0% chance it would have worked. Like,
Yeah.
probably you, like higher
Right.
than zero, but like you now know rental, you've been running it.
Right.
you're much more likely to be successful. The other thing we've heard for people who open in second locations, like making sure there are some sort of economies of scale, particularly like can you make the equipment, can you transfer it? So I don't know,
Exactly.
within 2 hours, don't open one in Texas. Like
Right.
use one where you could
Right.
transfer equipment equally. But we've been hearing a lot rental, the industry's been growing, and a lot of people are kind of going from the 1 to 2 location. And it sounds like you're poised for that, right?
Right.
You bought the first one, but maybe greenfield expansion for the second one.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I'm thinking because we're only limited, physically by the footprint that we're on now, where we are now. And I just see that we can actually, I know we can replicate what we've got at another location.
Again, as I mentioned, we have a lot of people listening to this who are in the rental industry. Some people are new, trying to get in. I've learned my way for 5 years. You have as well. What advice would you give someone who's interested in rental, wanting to learn? You kind of went the hard way, the way I did too. Where you just kind of did
Yeah.
it and you learned. But what are some resources out there that would help folks learn about the rental industry? How did you learn so fast?
Yeah, so I did. So one of the first things I did was I joined the ARA, used all the resources on the ARA website. Um, a lot of people in the rental industry are pretty open to talking to you.
Yeah,
So, if you make contacts and talk to people, most of the people will talk to you. Our the first ARA show was like a month after I closed on the business. And, I was there. I've been to
yeah,
every ARA show since I started. And I saw you there in Vegas.
yeah,
And it's just something that's a huge resource there. And really talking to people. I think going in rental stores, and that's what I did. I just kind of went in and talked to people, went into the stores, went back, and once you start talking to people, you make all these connections. And to this day I call some people that have dealt with to some capacity, but I can call somebody out in the field and say, hey, another rental company, hey, what do you think about this, or how would you handle this? And then they'll give me their take or their perspective on it.
yeah. I love this. I mean, I talk about this every time, but I love the industry. It's like people are so welcoming. There are people who are like, we are never going to be a fit for like it's different ICP, different segment of the market. And I see them like, hey, you got to come check out our store. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So I just do it. And people are just like, want you to come see it. They're very proud of it. And they're very much like open book, ask any question, even on the podcast. People just record it. People share a lot of stuff here. And
Yeah.
um, it's not normal. Not every
Yeah.
industry is like that. And I think the American Rental Association is awesome. There's a lot of other things. Peer Executive Group, Dan
Yep.
Crowley, another good group. There's just a lot of it's an industry that generally speaking wants to help each other. And
Yeah.
there are the big bad nationals. No one really doesn't like them that much,
Yep.
but like even
Yep.
they share stuff, right? Even
Yeah.
they kind of help the independents too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually joined the peer groups. Where I'm gonna have my first meeting next week or the week after. But yeah, I'm excited to get that kicked off too.
What group are you in?
Um,
Do you know?
I forget the name of the group.
Facilitator. Okay,
Yeah.
I know Crowley was episode before this.
I saw, yeah, I watched that one. Yep.
Yeah, I like those guys. I love what they're doing, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's affordable price, and they're bringing the community together. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's very exciting. So, biggest challenge going into next year? You've had a lot of growth, 2x, 2.5x revenue and
Yep.
profitability since you bought it. What's your biggest challenge going into 2026?
So I think the biggest thing for me is kind of getting getting situated with our new facility, new building. That's going to be a little bit of a pain while we're
Yeah.
continuing our business, but then also being able to, really the growth that we've seen is when we're adding new equipment. And I know to continue
Mm,
that growth, we have to continue to add more equipment. Getting that equipment with the stuff that we have going on in the limited footprint that we have, that's gonna be pretty tough for me. I think going into next year, once we get over that hurdle, and then we could really focus on getting that next location, I think we're going to be in a really good position to kind of get back where we need to be.
how far from your current location are you thinking? Have you picked a spot yet for the second location?
I haven't. I'm open. There's a couple areas within Rhode Island, in Rhode Island small, I mean, within
Yeah.
25 miles or so, where the demographics could be similar to the demographics that we have. And then, I think that that'll work, and we'll still be able to, like you say, we'll still be able to share the equipment, so we don't have to double our fleet to do that from the beginning, but hopefully we end up having to do that.
Yeah, sounds like, another year of investment, getting the second location, getting more equipment, so sometimes growth happens in stair steps, right? And you're gonna make a lot of investment and then poof, the next jump, right? So,
Right,
um,
exactly, exactly, and my whole thing's been really, trying to everything from the beginning. I've been investing back into the company because
yeah.
I really want to get to that next level. So I don't mind making sacrifices now in order to be where we need to be in the future.
Yeah. Well, I could tell you have a lot of pride in what you've done, and the numbers speak for themselves. And you took a company that was, whatever, middle of the road, whatever, and you've really taken to the next level. And there weren't doesn't sound like any shortcuts. I didn't hear any shortcuts, right? It was hard
Yeah,
work, right?
no
Doing
work. Yep,
painting the walls, putting the new parking lot in,
yep.
hiring, firing. It wasn't a silver bullet, and you just did the work. And it's been cool to hear your story. Last question I like to ask everyone before we wrap up: best career advice you've gotten that's helped shape your success and what you've been doing.
I think that the best career advice that I've gotten was, along the work ethic lines, that you don't have to be the smartest or fastest person in the room. You got to be
Mm,
able to put the work in. You got to be somebody that's going to be reliable, and you have to be able to know how to use your resources. I think that's one of the biggest things. Even as an engineering manager, I didn't have all the answers, but I knew which resources to go to get the answers and who was going to be the person that was going to be able to accomplish the tasks that we needed to accomplish.
Being reliable, consistent, and showing up. Don't need to be the fastest, hardest,
That's right.
strongest, smartest. I love it. Well, Dino, it's been great having you on today. Congrats on all your success, and I'm sure I'll see you at the ARA show. You'll be buying more equipment, I'm sure, in
Definitely. Yeah. I'll see
Orlando.
you there.
You'll
Thanks
be
for having
busy.
me. I appreciate it. And congrats on your
Yeah.
marathon. That's awesome.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Thanks,
Yep.
Dino.